The following video was sponsored by the Greek American Heritage Society of Philadelphia, preserving and promoting our community's history.
In March of 2018, he was bestowed by the Federation of Hellenic American Societies as Grand Marshal and led the Greek Independence Day Parade down the Benjamin Franklin Parkway. He was recognized for his years of service to the Philadelphia community. That legacy was initiated in 1972 when he arrived from Greece at the age of 30. By that time, he had already received his medical degree from the University of Thessaloniki. Philadelphia was supposed to be a place to continue his education in medicine before returning to Greece. During his time at the University of Pennsylvania, he completed his residency in internal medicine and a fellowship in gastroenterology. He also got to know his fellow Hellenes, the diaspora Greeks of Philadelphia, and felt a sense of belonging. So he and his wife stayed. 46 years later, he raised a family, serviced the community through a family practice, and spent many years working for the betterment of the Greek community through various organizations. Our guest today is Dr. George Ahtaridis. Welcome to Cosmos Philly, Dr. Ahtaridis.
Thank you. And thank you for coming here and giving me the opportunity to talk about my life and also discuss several issues of the Greek American community here in Philadelphia.
Let's talk first about your decision to stay in America during that time frame when you arrived in the early 70s. What was the initial motivation for that? How did it all happen?
When I came here in 1972 to complete the studies for internal medicine and gastroenterology. 6 years later, I was ready to go back home to Greece, but then at that time I was offered a position at the University of Pennsylvania as assistant professor of medicine, and we thought that we could stay here for a few more years. Eventually, of course, these few more years became 45 years, and we're still here. One of the main reasons that we stayed here in this place, in this city, was the fact that the Greek American community embraced us, me and my family. They became very, very good friends, and they showed me love, respect, and warmth.
Tell us about your early career as a doctor, gastroenterology. I'm sure the term is Greek, but tell us a little bit about how you got involved with gastroenterology. Was it something that you were interested in before you arrived from Greece?
Yes, indeed. I was always fascinated by gastroenterology, but at that time gastroenterology was just the beginning of the subspecialty. When I came here, I was at the beginning, I was at Graduate Hospital, where I met several people that were considered the leaders in gastroenterology. One of them is Dr. Henry Bacchus. Another one was Dr. Julius Deren, who was the chief of gastroenterology, and he was extremely nice to me. He was a very smart physician, very well-known physician in the area of Philadelphia, a good scientist and researcher. So he was in favor of me staying here, and he sent me, in fact, to the University of Pennsylvania for further studies in the esophageal motility subspecialty. That's where I spent one more year doing some research and publishing a few papers.
Where did that actually lead you afterwards? Did you initiate a practice? At what point did that happen?
Yes, after this supplemental year in research, we started the practice with Dr. Darren, who was my mentor, teacher, and I admired him. And gradually we got more physicians in our practice. So it was a pleasure really to work with them. And also at that time, a lot of Greek Americans found out that I was here and I had an office in Philadelphia, so subsequently they started coming to my practice and I became their physician.
What I wanted to know is, as you got to know the Greek community, where did you settle first?
At the beginning, we were in Cherry Hill in New Jersey, and where I met several friends because we had nobody at that time that was relative or friend when we came here to this country. In 1982, we moved to Newtown Square, and at that time, in fact, a couple of years earlier, I had opened an office in Upper Darby, which was usually I had the office hours in the evening because I was working during the day with the other practice.
Mm-hmm. What took you to Upper Darby? What was the decision for Upper Darby? We know that there was a huge Greek community there, and it was moving west. What brought you there? Was it the community?
I thought that at that time I could serve that Greek American community by having the office in Upper Darby, because I knew that it was difficult for them to come down to Philadelphia, to the city, and see me as their physician.
So when you were working and setting up this new office in Upper Darby, you were building a relationship with the community. Were you involved with any of the organizations yet, or is it something that came gradually from your practice?
Right. It's good that you asked me this question. It's I feel so happy to go back to those years and think about the Macedonian Association of Pavlos Melas. This was the first time that I was in the society meeting in the United States. And everybody was so nice to me and to my family. And then subsequently I was involved with this society, and I became president of the Macedonian Association in Philadelphia.
Do you remember your first days with that organization? Were you just a guest? You said, I'll go. They invited you, or did they twist your arm? I mean, what was the predicament or the situation? Do you recall that?
No, it was interesting because there were a couple of members that were from my hometown in Veria. Okay. So they introduced me there, and but then subsequently everybody became a friend in the association.
What was it like for you finding all these fellow Hellenes, and some of them from your own hometown? I mean, there must have been a reunion of sorts, a bond, you know, so far from home, and it's still in the first 10 years of your life here. It must have been very special for you.
Yes, indeed. The fact is that in the first years of your life in abroad in the United States, you always want to meet Greek people. You always want to meet people that maybe you knew in Greece. And we thought that this was one of the best associations to get together, to see new people, to meet new acquaintances, and feel like you are home. And that's the purpose really of these societies. Subsequently, of course, I discovered that these associations, especially the Macedonian Association, were established years ago, several years ago, in 1947, and they were also involved with the history of Macedonia, and that's what attracted me. And gradually I became more involved, eventually leading to the position of Supreme, as we used to call it, Supreme President of the Pan-Macedonian Association of USA and Canada. That was in 1986.
Would you say that when you were back in Greece, did you have this passion or drive to be involved with civic groups like that? Or is this something that you felt, or as they say, you feel when you're further away from home, from the motherland, you feel this draw to be more Greek when you're outside of the country? Is there a draw for this?
There is no question about this, but even in Greece, I was involved with several other societies while a student at the University of Pennsylvania. In fact, I remember that we had established an educational society in Veria, where students in Thessaloniki, but we also had this educational society, and we presented several lectures. We organized several lectures, and one of them, in fact, was with Mr. Papanoutsos. I remember this name because that was something that changed my life. During that lecture, when the speaker came in, there were hundreds of people in one movie theater in Veria. I presented the speaker, and then there was a young girl dressed as a student, as they used to do at that time, a student of the high school, who offered a bunch of flowers to the speaker, to Mr. Papanoutsos. And we met there, and it's really interesting to say that this girl became my wife later, a few years later. So I met her, we met, let's say, before this lecture. And I always had this love to have some lectures, to have some other educational responsibilities, so that we can, let's say, educate the people, educate ourselves, and be involved in literature and theater.
As a member of the Pan-Macedonian Society of Philadelphia, you got to experience quite a bit. You also were part of the Federation and Hank. But let's focus on the Pan-Macedonian organization for one moment. There's a topic that's reared its head many times over the last quarter century. The name, the issue, Macedonian. Could we talk about that briefly, how you were involved and how the issue was handled here in Philadelphia?
Yeah, when I was the president of the association, which was a huge association at that time, having approximately 83 chapters and societies in the United States, and maybe a couple of dozen in Canada. We did not have this active issue, but the issue was brewing at that time. And the issue was that the government in Skopje introduced several classes and ideas about the history of Macedonia. Basically, they changed the history in their schools and high schools and universities and so on. And they presented a different way of looking at the history of Macedonia. So we're aware of this problem in the 80s. And in fact, we're in touch with several people in Greece, talking to them about this issue. Of course, the issue became active when Yugoslavia collapsed, and subsequently there were the 6 democracies that were just independent states. As the Skopje state became independent, and they got the name of Macedonia, which the Greek government never recognized and should not recognize.
How did the North American Pan-Macedonians deal with it as an issue? Were they quick to respond?
We were very, very quick to respond. We were upset, and at that time there was so much discussion about this issue, awareness of what the risk is, because it also in their constitution they contain some articles that they say that this Macedonia is the whole area of Macedonia, including the Greek Macedonia. So they have some kind of plans to unite the whole Macedonia under their auspices, under their estate. And at that time, we're able to collect a lot of money and organize the demonstrations in Washington and New York. There are tens and tens of buses that left from here to Washington. So it was a huge demonstration, I remember that, in 1992, against the recognition of this state as a Republic of Macedonia.
Let's talk a little bit about your involvement with the Federation. Was it a gradual step from the Pan-Macedonians to the Federation, or was it a dual role that you were involved in both?
Yeah. No, at that time I was involved just with the Federation. I became the representative from the Macedonian Association, Pavlos Melas, the local chapter here in Philadelphia. And subsequently, I was elected as president of the Federation. And these were good years, really. I remember the camaraderie, the friendship, and the cooperation of all the presidents of the societies, churches, and so on. I made a lot of friends. I met a lot of good people during that time, including my good friend, Demosthenis Vasiliou, and we're still very, very good friends. He's my best friend. He's a very good guy, and I love him and I admire him. So with him and several other people, we decided to continue, of course, the parade, the Greek independence celebration, which had started approximately 15 years before, in the late 60s. But we also did something unique for the city of Philadelphia. It was, we decided to name one week in June the Hellenic Week. And we had several meetings, lectures, and also we had something similar to the festivals that the churches hold now. So it was a 2-day festival down in Penn's Landing.
Correct. I do remember that as a kid, yeah.
It was beautiful because each society had their own booth, and they were helping. It was, again, thousands of people, mainly Greeks, but a lot of non-Greeks.
Was that held in direct, was it tied to the Independence Day parade, or was it held at a different time? It was in June.
Different, yeah.
So it was a way of bringing the entire community together.
Exactly.
And celebrating Hellenism. Yes. In spring, which is much nicer. Which makes me think, what about our community today? Where's an area that we should be thinking about? Where are we moving today as a community, and what can we do to really take it forward?
Well, I believe that the Greek American community here in Philadelphia is still strong. We know that there's not so much interest as in those years, 25, 30 years ago, because of several reasons. Of course, the first reason is that the first generation gets older and gradually they're not so active with the associations. But I see now that a lot of societies are coming back to the Federation. A lot of churches that are very active, and they are, I see a lot of people there going to church every Sunday. I see the Goya and other youth organizations becoming very active in the Greek American community. In fact, we saw this thing a few days ago when they went to New York for another demonstration for the Macedonian issue, or for their participation in the Greek Independence Day, in the parade. You see that there are a lot of kids, there are a lot of young people participating in the parade. So this is very nice. And I believe that at some point we should always think about the young people, give them the means of learning the language, teach them what it means to be Greek.
Let's talk about moments of pride, achievement that you were witness to and participating in the community. Can you mention one or two of those?
Yes. Well, when we are going to the Independence Hall and laying the wreath during the celebration of the 25th of March, that was a moment of pride, because we were there in front of the Independence Hall honoring the Greek heroes and also the American heroes of the revolutions. That was something that I cannot forget.
Well, the community also had, there was another achievement that took place in the Greek community that you were part of. In the early 80s, a Greek newspaper came to fruition that you were involved with, I believe through the Federation. Is that correct?
Yes, yes, indeed.
Could we talk about that?
Yeah, that was the time that I was the president. I think it was the second year I was the president of the Federation, and we decided to publish a newspaper that was going to be monthly newspaper so that we can have the news of the associations, the news of the Greek American community, and also some educational material. And my wife became the editor of the newspaper, and the late Marika Trizonis was one of the main contributors to the newspaper.
What was it called?
It was called Hellenic Life.
Hellenic Life. How long was it around?
That was around about 2 years or 3 years. I don't remember how much. So we had, of course, the first issue is going to be financial. So we usually paying for the newspaper to come out every month. But it was interesting because it had so many other, besides the news, so many other cultural articles and history of Greece, history of mythology, and all this kind of stuff. So it was very, very good achievement, along with the fact that at some point we presented excerpts of the Greek tragedy. There were two guys in New York that there were members of the Hellenic National Theater, and they came here, they presented this short excerpts of Greek tragedies some time ago.
Well, you mentioned your wife earlier. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about growing up in Greece and then your family, how your life started.
Yeah, I grew up in Veria most of my time. At the beginning, during the German occupation, in fact, we're down in one small village called Tagarohori, outside Veria. It's about 3 miles outside Veria, where my father was a teacher there in the elementary school. Then we moved to Veria because I have two sisters, and they wanted to go to enroll into the high school in Veria. So we moved to Veria, and then that's where I went to elementary school and high school. I was, I can say that I was a good student, and eventually, after a lot of thoughts, I went to the medical school in Thessaloniki, and I don't regret it.
You don't regret it. Well, you talked a little bit about your family, your early family. We had a previous discussion where we mentioned the American Farm School.
Right.
That was an interesting talk we had. Could you briefly give us a little bit of background on the tie to that?
Yeah, my mother, who I also admired, and father, again, they were from refugees from Asia Minor. They came to Greece in 1923, and a few years later, my father was teacher in this village in Tagarohori. A few years later, he went and stayed in the American Farm School outside Thessaloniki. He stayed there for a few months, and he was taught the new products, the new cultivations of land, the new ways of cultivating the land, and especially about the trees. They tell me that at that time there were no trees in the area, so gradually he taught the villagers how to put trees, how to establish the new crops, the new cultivation of land, let's say, with cotton and so on. And he later, this area became so rich from the trees, from the peach trees and apple trees and so on. In fact, at some point we had a place, it was about 4 acres of land that my father had put trees. And it was, they say, around the war, the German occupation, was the only area that there were trees, that they were producing something, producing apples and peaches and so on. So that was the experience, really. But it's interesting, as you say, that the man had this insight, and he went there, and he offered something also to the village and to the area of Greece.
You came to the States, as we said very early on, with your wife and one of your children. Tell us a little bit about your kids. The 4, I think there's 4 of them. Yeah.
Yeah, we are blessed, and we have 4 children. They are 2 of them are around this area. One is in northern New Jersey, and one is in Massachusetts. All of them are married. We have 6 grandchildren.
Congratulations, Azizun. Thank you. Let me ask, did any of them follow in your footsteps?
Yeah, my son. My son is a doctor, and he's married to a doctor also. So they live in Massachusetts. Unfortunately, we don't see them very often, like here, the one that we have just a few miles away. But we're proud because they were very good kids. I mean, everybody, all the parents love their kids. But we have a good reason that they are good kids, good family. They established good families. The grandchildren speak the Greek language, even the grandchildren. But the kids speak the language very well, fluently. And they are members of the churches here in this area. They were involved with the Greek American community, and they are still involved with this community. When they were younger, they were members of the Megas Alexandros Macedonian Association. There were the dance groups, and also they participated in the several festivities related to the association. They were all of them became presidents of Megas Alexandros, or even presidents of the whole youth association of the Pan-Macedonian Association, involving the whole United States.
So they've definitely carried the torch of Hellenism forward.
Indeed, and that's one more reason to
A notch on the belt, a sense of pride.
to be proud of them. I am.
What about you today? What keeps you? What do you do with your time, and do you miss your practice?
I do. To be honest, I do miss my practice. I miss the patients that were so nice, because my life was devoted in caring for the patients. All of my patients, or I can say 99%, were very nice. I had no problems with them. They appreciated what I was doing for them. I really cared for them. And especially for the Greek Americans. I can tell you that I miss that Upper Darby office. But when I see the people, they recognize this, and I'm happy to see them, happy to say something, to discuss about their health, to discuss about their family, because I always felt that they were part of my family.
Do you think you'll still play a role or attend some of the organizational meetings in the community and be involved somehow?
After so many years, right? Well, I still think, yes, I still can be, right. Somebody else can be a leader. We need a leader in these events and societies, and I can help as much as I can. But the main thing is going to be, maybe I can get together with the president of the Greek American Heritage Foundation Society, rather, and do something for this museum, something more. Wonderful. This concept was beautiful, and I think you're doing a good service to the Greek American community.
Is there a final thought or comment, a final thought for the next generation of Greek Americans here in Philadelphia that you can leave us with?
I think we have good genes, and if we have leaders, we can continue to be Hellenes, we can continue to be Greek Americans, but we can continue the miracle of what is called Hellenism in this country.
Well, when Christmas comes, I'm sure the Macedonians, the Pundians will all be knocking at your door, and I'll be standing with them, visiting your home again. Thank you so much for speaking with us today, Dr. George Ahtaridis. We wish you all the best.
Thank you. Thank you for coming here again, and I'll be looking for this visit for the calendar, right? The calendar. Yeah, it's beautiful. We always get ready for this because we know that they will come, and we appreciate this, and we invite everybody to come here for the calendar.
Nice, Akala.
And again, thank you for thank you, Cosmos Philly. Thank you for coming here, and also the Greek American Heritage Society for doing so good job.
For more information about sponsoring or viewing the interview series, visit the Greek American Heritage Society of Philadelphia online at gahsp.org.